Hello and welcome everyone, and welcome to How to Buy a Business Using Other People's Money. And during this training, I'm going to show you exactly how you can buy a solid, profitable business without reaching into your own pocket, without dipping into your own savings, and without going cap in hand to the bank. It's going to be an eye-opening training for you. So I would suggest that you close down all distractions, put your phone on silent, turn it over so you can't see the notifications. That's what I've done, and focus for the next few minutes so I can show you exactly how people buy businesses the smart way. So some of you, of course, won't know who I am. So let me give you the very quick one-screen introduction, just so you know a little bit about my background, so that you know that I know what I'm talking about. When I was 27 years old, I sold a publishing business. It was a magazine publishing business. I'd started it 2.5 years earlier, and I sold it to a corporate training company in London. And I had my eyes open because I made more money the day I sold that business than I had in the previous 2.5 years combined of owning and running that business. And I realized at that point, although to be fair, it took me a few years for it to really sink in, that I was going to always make more money selling businesses than I was actually owning and running them. I then grew a business by acquisition. Now, what does that mean? That means that I actually bought out my main competitor, combined it with my existing business to create a far larger business, and I sold it to a London-based private equity firm in 2007. And it's pretty fair to say, I think that that was a life-changing deal. Now, over the years, I've written 10 books on business. The first one was back in 2004. The most recent ones about buying a business are, in fact, the most popular ones of all the 10 that I've written. And over the years, I've bought and sold from private equity companies and also from other business owners, including a deal, which I'm going to be telling you about later in the training, where I bought a digital marketing business for just £1, $1, and turned that into £1.3 million in 11 months. Later on in the training, I'll tell you exactly how I did that. I then grew a group in a completely different sector that I knew nothing about by acquisition. I did 48 business acquisitions in 30 months, in 2.5 years. And you know something? I actually wouldn't recommend it. It was very, very stressful indeed. But it goes to show that if you've got a plan and a focus, if you want to buy one business in the next 12 months or two businesses in the next 12 months, you can do it. And this training is going to show you how. I also find the time to help others do the same. I love doing these trainings. I love helping people who've never owned a business before get into business ownership by owning a solid, profitable business that positively cash flows from day one. I also enjoy helping business owners expand their empire by buying out their competitors and complementary businesses. So that's the bit about me. The rest of this training is about you and also about my clients, because I want you to show that it's not just me that can do this. It's the people that I train up who can do this as well. So here is a very provocative question. Would you like to be luckier in business? And I think that most people would, right? We'd all like to be a little bit luckier in life and in business. Now, I want you to think of your favorite Roman philosopher. Get one for me now. Favorite Roman philosopher. I'm joking, of course, but the very well-known Roman philosopher Seneca said, luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity. When you're prepared for something, you see the opportunity. And the worldwide financial turmoil that we are in right now is the opportunity for you, the business buyer, regardless of where you are in the world. And if you're prepared for that opportunity, when you see the opportunity to buy a business without spending any of your own money, a solid, profitable business, then that is an opportunity that you cannot pass by. So you have to be prepared. And this training today is part of your preparation. You see, buying a business is the fastest way for a business to grow. It's the fastest route to business growth. Forget the Facebook ads, forget hiring salespeople. Buy a business, you can double the size of your existing business overnight. It also allows you in the future to cash out, to sell that business for the very largest number, for the retirement number, for the magic number that would set you up for the rest of your life. So I want to introduce you to a few people that I've trained up on how to buy a business and tell you what they have done, because I want you to realize that this is accessible to everyone. It doesn't matter whether you have a full-time job or a full-time business. You can always find the time to do this because buying a business does not take as much time as you think. Now, Andy's in the digital marketing space, and the first deal that he did, the first acquisition, doubled the size of his business. So he'd been working very, very hard for 10 years to grow a business. He came to me. He actually told me that he didn't have time. I always find it amazing when people say they don't have time to do something. That often means they don't have a plan. They don't have a system. They don't have a process. So I gave him the system. He followed the system. He bought a business. He found that he did have the time after all. And that first deal doubled the size of his existing business. And he's done 4 more since. This is Daniel. Daniel bought his first business in the engineering sector. You see, this works whatever sector you are. It doesn't matter where you are in the world, what type of business you're interested in buying, even if you don't yet know what type of business that you want to buy, this system and methodology can be applied to every sector there is. So the first business he bought was a 3 million revenue business. So that was doing 3 million of income every single year and making £400,000 profit. And remember, when you buy a business after taxes, all the profit is yours. Now, the question to ask yourself is, that more than what I'm earning right now? And it certainly was for Daniel. And Daniel wanted to buy this business without spending any of his own money. And he did it. And he used one of the methods that I am going to be teaching you later on. This is Darren. He got into a brand new sector, hairdressing. His background was IT. I mean, you couldn't get too much further apart, can you? IT and hairdressing. His daughter actually said that she wanted to start a hairdressing salon. And Darren said, well, I've been on Jonathan's training. I know exactly what to do. Let's buy a hairdressing salon instead. He actually did 21 deals during the pandemic lockdown, creating the largest group in Southern England. And he did all of that whilst the country was locked down. He did it via Zoom. So if you're concerned about traveling in different places, or you want to buy a business that's a long way away from you, you can actually do everything via video calls these days. Now, this is Gavin. Again, very, very different sector. He's in printing. He's in the north of England, and he did 9 acquisitions during lockdown, just before, during, and just after lockdown. And now he's thinking about the exit. He's now built a sizable business, and this sizable business is now going to be worth lots of money that's going to set him and his family up for life. This is John. He's in the IT sector. He's focused on buying the assets of businesses that are struggling. Now, this is a very interesting strategy, and this is going to suit you if you like a bargain. And let's face it, who doesn't like a bargain? Who doesn't like a deal? And John is a very, very smart deal maker. He uses the strategies that we teach on the training. And as a result, he's growing his business faster using organic growth than he ever using acquisitions than he ever would using organic growth. So organic growth is where you grow one customer at a time. You get a customer today, you get a customer tomorrow, you lose one the next day. John is buying up books of customers. So he's buying 150 customers from that business. He's buying 100 customers from that business and growing like that. Now, this is Perry. Perry chose a completely different path as a result of the training. he started buying businesses that had government contracts. So he focused on larger deals, and he did two multi-million pound deals in the first 12 months. You see, all this is possible when you know how. Now, Peter is a wonderful case study because he bought 9 businesses totaling 20 million of annual revenue. And he did it whilst living in France. He bought them in other countries whilst living in France. And most of that time, again, was during the pandemic lockdown period. And he is sector agnostic. What does that mean? That means he doesn't really care what sector the business is in, as long as it is a profitable business that puts money in his pocket. This is Peter. Peter is in IT services. His first deal was £1. Now, when you hear about someone buying a business for £1, quite often it's a situation where you take over the liabilities of the business. Now, I certainly would not recommend that, definitely as your first deal. Now, this business that Peter bought for £1, it was actually £1 of his own money. The rest of the money came from other sources. That's the smart bit, you see. You don't put your own money into the deal, you use other people's money. I'll show you how to do that on the training today. And he had it was a highly profitable business that he found, but also a highly motivated owner. A highly motivated owner. Now, this is the key. If you're writing things down, I would strongly suggest that you write this down. You need to find a business with an owner who is highly motivated to sell. You don't want one of these business owners who folds their arms and says, oh, come on, make me an offer. If the offer's good enough, I'll be interested. No, move on to the next person. That is very, very important. You want someone who says, I'd love to sell you my business. Could I sell it to you like yesterday? I want to do the deal as quickly as possible. This is Phil. His first ever deal was a 7 million revenue business, making 1 million of annual profit. Now, he paid 1.7 million for this business. Now, most people watching the training right now are going to be thinking, well, where do I get 1.7 million pounds from? Well, Phil did not have 1.7 million pounds. He just didn't have it. He was really actually down on his luck at the point that I met him. So he used my methods to fund the 1.7 million pounds without having to reach into his own pocket. And he very proudly showed me his online banking the other week. He showed me that he now had £730,000 cash at bank, and he only bought the business 4 months ago. You see, everything can change very, very quickly when you know how to do this. Ray's in logistics. He started with a nice sized business, £700,000 of revenue. You might think he should be happy with that, but he did 3 deals and now he's got a £2.9 million a year business. And you know something, all of these people are very motivated by achievement and doing things that other people tell them that they can't do. But they're also motivated by what can happen to their financial security and the security of their family when they buy businesses that produce this amount of cash flow. You see, the light bulb moment for me, and maybe you've already had this light bulb moment yourself, is that you make more money from buying and selling businesses than actually running them. But there are 3 ways to make money from business acquisition. Number 1, when you buy the business. Yes, it's absolutely possible when you buy a business to make money on day 1. Now, I think that's kind of exciting. So the day you close the business transaction, you actually make money that day. The second time is when you own the business. That's the profits of the business. And remember, after taxes, all the profits are yours. And then, of course, when you sell the business, that's typically the biggest payday of your life. So when you become a deal maker rather than just a business owner, in fact, being a business owner always sounds a bit boring when you discover what you can do as a deal maker. It actually saves you time. You get to your goals faster. Things that you wanted to achieve over the next 10 years, you realize you can achieve over the next 3 years. It's also going to save you money as well. You see, when you start a business, you can spend 3 years putting money in rather than taking money out. When you buy a profitable cash flowing business, you're actually making money from day 1. And also it saves you frustration. You see, if you buy a business that's making a certain amount of money every single month, you know what it is going to do. It makes business more predictable. And as a result, you sleep better at night. And who doesn't want to sleep better at night? So here's some questions for you. Does this sound familiar? You optimistically say that every year is going to be better. You see, if you have an entrepreneurial mindset, you're probably like me, and you say every year is going to be better. Next year is going to be better. You think that working longer hours equals more success. So you put in the extra effort. You work the evenings and the weekends. But sometimes it doesn't actually turn into additional success, does it? You never get any scale. So maybe you've got a business right now, you've got a startup, and you just can't seem to get it over $100,000, over $500,000. You can't break the magic million mark. Maybe you limit yourself. You say, well, you know something? I am not sure if I'm cut out for owning a big business. Now, here's a thing that you should remember. When you buy a business, you don't run it yourself. A manager runs it for you. You're not buying yourself a job, you're buying a business. Quite often you get paid last. If you have a business right now, you might be in this feeling where you have this feeling where you pay everyone else. And if there's something left over at the end, that's yours. And maybe your business is so busy that your life is chaos. Your life is hectic. You never get a moment to yourself. You see, none of the things that you can see on your screen right now are good things. But there is a solution. Part of the solution is good coffee. Let me have a sip. But the real solution is buying a business. You see, if you want to 10x your company, this is the fastest way to do it. If you're struggling with marketing, you might think to yourself, who already has the customers that I want? Why don't I just buy a business that already has the customers that I want? Problem with marketing solved. You can't get the right team or management. Maybe that's a real problem. I mean, these days it can be. So why don't you buy a business that is already big enough to have a management team, then they can manage your existing business as well. Maybe you're struggling to break into new markets. You want to break into the next town, but you find it hard to do that. So just buy a business in the next town. And maybe you're frustrated by your competitors. Buy them out. That's what I did. I've got a great case study coming up all about that. So why don't more people use business acquisition as their growth strategy? Sometimes they never thought of it. That's it. They just never thought that it was possible. Or they think they need loads of money. By the end of this training, you will realize you do not need lots of money to buy a business. Maybe they don't have the expertise to construct a deal. Now, that is a real art form, putting together a deal where everyone is happy. And maybe they don't have what we call a deal team. You see, 80% of the hard work when buying a business is done by other people. Now, you still have to put in some effort, but 80% of that hard work is done by other people. And maybe for some people, like Andy in my example earlier, thinks that buying a business is very, very time consuming. Look, everything is time consuming when you don't know how. If you have a system, a formula, a process, no, the time is very, very limited. You don't need a lot of time to buy a business. You see, you will make more money buying and selling companies than you will ever make just running a company. So if you want to get into business, buying a business that someone else runs for you, a profitable cash flowing business, is the answer. So you need to transform your mindset from being a doer to a deal maker, a doer in your job, a doer in your business, to being someone who puts together deals. So let me give you an amazing case study of how I added 2.5 million to the value of a business with one acquisition. So I started a business back in 1999. That's like what, 23 years ago. And we did 960,000 of revenue in the first 12 months. Not bad for a startup. Year 2, we did 1.4 million of revenue. Year 3, 1.9 million of revenue. Year 4, 2.2 million of revenue. Now, this business is growing really nicely. I think anyone would be proud to have this business. And then it all went a bit wrong in year 5 because we did exactly the same as year 4. We plateaued. We couldn't grow anymore. In fact, I was worried that we were going to start moving backwards. That was my biggest concern. We'd reached the peak and now the only way was down. But then look at year 6, 5.1 million of revenue. That is quite a change from year 5 to year 6. So what happened? I tell you what happened. I got a phone call on a Sunday afternoon. It was the owner of one of my competitors. In fact, my largest competitor, one of the largest businesses in the sector. And he phoned me and he said, Jonathan, I'd like to have a meeting with you tomorrow. Is that possible? And I said, look, you're not going to mess me around, are you? Because he'd messed me around before. He said, no, he said, I promise I'm not wasting your time. So I went to see him the next day, Monday afternoon. Let's fast forward. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. 4 days later, I owned my competitor's business. And by owning my competitor's business, putting the two businesses together, I now grew the business dramatically. We jumped from 2.2 to 5.1. Now, at the beginning of January 2007, I got the business valued. This is my original business, 2.5 million pounds. My accountant said, if you sold the business right now, that's what you'd get. But then I actually did sell it on November the 17th, 2007, and I sold it for £5 million. What was the difference between January and November? It was the acquisition of my competitor. And I should point out, I bought my competitor for the cost of the tables, the chairs, the database in the office. As a result, doubled my exit value. Now, if you own a business right now, you might be thinking, if I could buy a competitor, maybe I can double my exit value and sell later in a year's time. If you're not in business yet, you should find this story inspiring, because it will make you start to think, if I could just buy several businesses and put them together, maybe I could sell those businesses and I'd make more money than if I was just working on the day-to-day grind, the day-to-day slog. Now, the question I get asked more than anything is it really possible to buy a business for £1? Well, it's a really, really good question. £1, $1, it doesn't really matter, €1, whatever your currency is. We hear these stories, don't we, about businesses being bought for practically nothing. So I want to give you a case study. It was a £1 investment that I made for £4.75 million revenue digital marketing business. Now, the question to ask yourself is, if I started this business from scratch, how long would it take me to get to 4.75 million? It might take you forever, but I did it in a matter of weeks with this acquisition. So a 4.75 million pound a year business owned by a private equity firm. They're the guys with the money, by the way. Now, why did I buy it for £1? Well, it was simple. It was making a loss and they wanted to get rid of it. Now, here is my word of caution. Never buy a business that's making a loss unless you know two things. Number one, why it's making a loss. Number two, how to fix it. If you don't know why it's making a loss and you don't know how to fix it, you've got yourself a big problem. Never buy a problem. Now, this is not going to be the first type of deal that you do. The first type of deal that you're going to do, if you follow my process, is a solid, profitable business. Now, you can buy a turnaround like this later on in the acquisition journey, but not your first deal. It had a negative balance sheet of £20 million. That was how much the private equity firm had paid for the business 5 years earlier. So I completed the deal in 12 weeks. Now you might think, well, Jonathan, you're only buying the business for £1. How come it takes 12 weeks? Well, I promise you the paperwork was huge. Nothing's ever simple when you buy from a private equity firm. It took 6 months to turn the loss into a profit. Yeah, 6 months. And I got to tell you, it was a hard 6 months. I worked really, really hard for those 6 months. It then took me 12 weeks to sell the business. And I sold the business for 1.3 million, 324 days after the acquisition. Now, I'm certainly not telling you this case study to show off. I'm not that kind of person. But what I am showing it to you for is to show you what is possible when you know what you are doing. Knowledge is king. You've got to have the knowledge. There are 4 golden rules of business acquisition. The first is you never use your own money. You never want to use your own money when buying a business. You want to use other people's money. I'll give you some examples of that in a moment. You never run the business yourself. You see, most people who get into business think they're going to be turning up at 8 o'clock in the morning, leaving at 8 o'clock at night, never seeing the family. No, pay someone else to do that. Let them run the business for you. You're the deal maker, remember, not the doer. Never take personal risk. If you do things my way, there'll be no personal risk for you whatsoever, and plan your exit early. Now, with the example that I just gave you of the digital marketing company, I already knew who I was going to sell it to before I bought it, which is why I could do the deal in less than a year, from owning it, tidying it all up, cleaning it up, and then selling it on to the next person. Now, a lot has changed as a result of the pandemic. Now, the good news is, from your perspective as a business buyer or a future business buyer, the changes have all been very, very positive. They are changes that can help you. The first is availability of deals. There are more businesses to buy than ever before. But here's the thing: never go through a business broker for your first deal. Never go to a website to find a business to buy for your first deal. There are smarter ways of doing it. And also, the ability to do no money down deals has gone up. You see, the power is all in the hands of you, the business buyer, not in the seller. You see, there are way more businesses up for sale than there are buyers wanting to buy them. So the power is in your hands, which means that you can decide how to structure the deal. I'll give you some deal structures in a moment. The speed at which you can buy a business is faster now than it ever has been. You can do a deal in a matter of weeks rather than the months that it used to take. And the type of acquisition has changed. There are several different ways to buy a business, different legal ways to buy a business. You can choose now the best way, because the way that people used to do it is the slow way. There is now a faster way of doing deals. But there are some misunderstandings that people have. The first is they think that the only way to buy a business is to have lots of money in your bank account. Now, I know why people think that is because they watch people buy businesses and they automatically think that person wrote a huge check to buy the business. Absolutely not true. The savvy business buyer uses other people's money. Now, your credit rating is irrelevant. I have people on my courses whose credit rating is absolutely shot to pieces. It doesn't stop them in any way whatsoever, because you personally are not ever going to be borrowing. Now, when we talk about a no money down deal, that doesn't mean that the business is free. No, the seller still gets the sum of money that you've agreed on and that they're happy with. It just means that you're not putting any of your own money into the deal. And as I've just said, you should never go to a business broker for your first deal. The best place to find businesses to buy are businesses that aren't yet advertised for sale, businesses that are what we call off market. They are businesses that aren't yet advertised. Now, let me tell you about the most common methods of financing a business acquisition. The first is one of my favorites, which is buy now, pay later. So you buy the business now, you pay later. You buy now, you pay later. Buy the business today, pay for it later. Now, how do we pay for it later? Well, we pay for it out of cash flow. The business pays for its own acquisition. Now, let's just pause and think about that for a moment. If a business can pay for its own acquisition and it doesn't involve you putting any money in, how many businesses could you buy like that? Maybe you're thinking like 2, 5, all of them, infinite. Absolutely. You see, if you buy now, pay later, and the business pays for itself and you don't have to spend any money, well, why don't you just buy every single business that you can buy like that, that makes sense when it fits in with your plan? And by the way, you've got to have a plan. You've got to have an acquisition plan. More about that later. You can also raise finance against the assets of the business. Now, if you're with me this far on the training, if you stuck with me through the training this far, I can tell that you're serious, because only serious people would be on the training this far. So this is why I'm slowing down a little bit, because I know that you really want to know how to do this. So we can raise finance against the assets of the business, whether the business owns a property, whether the business has got machinery or vehicles. We can actually raise finance, it's called asset finance, against the assets of the business, and we can use that money that we raise to buy the business. It's called a leveraged buyout, and we can do a leveraged buyout on any business that has the right types of assets. Another method is using the company's own cash. So if the business already has cash at bank, we can actually use that cash to buy the business. And also we can finance against the debtor book. Now, what is the debtor book? You'll notice that I don't use any jargon, by the way. When I teach people how to buy a business, I never confuse people. I never overwhelm people. I never use jargon, but sometimes the odd word creeps in. So let me explain what this means. So this is where the business is owed money by customers. The invoices have been sent out. The customers haven't yet paid them. Maybe they're going to pay them in 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. And we can actually get something called invoice financing to borrow against those outstanding invoices. And we can use that money to buy the business. Now, the clients on my training programs use this method again and again and again because it is such a strong and fast method for buying a business. And the fifth method of financing a business, and there are lots more, but these are the most common methods, is borrowing against the future cash flows of the business. Now, remember the golden rule. The golden rule is you only ever buy a business that's making money. And if the business is making money, we can borrow against the business's future cash flows to fund its own acquisition. Now, this is really clever stuff. I'm explaining it in a very simple, straightforward way, but don't underestimate it. It's very, very clever stuff. This is how people buy businesses without using their own money. Now, what can stop you? Hopefully by now you're inspired. You're thinking, oh my goodness, I want to do this. I want to get going. And maybe you want to get going like right now. So the question is, what can stop you? I have worked with hundreds and hundreds, and in fact, actually over the years, thousands of people who wanted to buy a business. And I can tell you exactly what will get in the way of you doing this. Number one is not knowing how to generate enough deal options. So you only find one business owner to speak to. Now, what are the chances of speaking to one business owner and buying that business? Probably pretty slim, okay? So if you've got lots of options, if you're good at generating deal flow, that is going to always help you. The second is lack of knowledge. A little knowledge is a dangerous thing, and it certainly is when buying a business. If you get the process wrong, there can be personal financial risk to you. And I do not want to ever see that happen. So make sure that you get the knowledge. Lack of confidence and belief in the process. So you don't really know how the process works. And also, it's mindset. And this is one of the biggest things. If you believe you can, you can. And you will achieve it. And if you believe you can't, you won't achieve it. So you need the knowledge, you need the confidence, you need to understand the process, but you also need that mindset. And I'm a big believer in positivity. If you're a positive person, you are going to make this happen. No one wants to sell their business to a negative person. That's the way I look at it. If you're a positive person and you've got the knowledge and you've got the systems and you've got the process to buy a business combined with mindset, you will be successful. But unfortunately, mindset alone is not enough. You need to actually take action. And this is what separates the people who just go on webinar training and never do anything and the people who are successful in business and in life. The big thing that separates them is the ability to take action, the ability to move yourself from where you are now to where you want to be. Now, if you've been with me this far in the training, you're